Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller TV series named Into the Dark, Season 1, Selected Episodes, Part 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story, titled Puka, begins with a solitary man named Wilson, a small-time actor, just moving into a new apartment. His neighbor is a finely dressed old lady who is gentle and enjoys a bit of whiskey after meals. When she's had too much, she dances around speaking nonsense. One day, Wilson sees an ad in a restaurant looking for actors and decides to give it a try. There are many actors auditioning, but Wilson only recites half a line of his dialogue and dramatically passes the audition. The casting director asks him to play various roles and is pleased with his performance. He then pulls out an adorably ugly doll. The so-called actor recruitment is to have Wilson wear a costume and play the part of a doll. The director says this doll, called Puka, can repeat what you say, much like a talking Tom toy. This doll is to be launched as their company's new product for Christmas. The doll is so ugly, it's infuriating. Yet the director praises it in front of Wilson, saying his unique personality perfectly merges with the doll. Wilson tries it on and it fits well. He doesn't want to do it, but the director offers good money, so he reluctantly signs a confidentiality agreement. Later, Wilson brings the costume home and can't resist trying it on again. The moment he puts it on, he goes berserk, wrecking his home. The next second, he opens the door from outside, looking at the mess. The costume is still on his bed, and he feels like he's losing his mind, not remembering anything that just happened, as if it wasn't him wearing the costume. Because Christmas is approaching, Wilson decorates a Christmas tree for the old lady and bids her farewell like family before rushing off to work. A few days later, Puka goes on sale and the scene is packed. It seems the director isn't the only one with questionable taste. Wilson is responsible for wearing the costume and interacting with the kids buying toys. In the crowd, a single mother named Melanie catches Wilson's eye. He is smitten by her and even spies on her from behind the window during his break. The director finds out about Wilson's interest in Melanie and specifically requests her business card. Wilson looks her up online and finds out that Melanie is a real estate agent. He is thrilled and plans to pursue her when he gets the chance. After Wilson's departure, the costume astonishingly got up on its own. Its eyes turned red, and it even secretly opened the computer to note down Melanie's details. With both being single, Wilson thought it was the perfect time to make a hormone move. The following day, he found Melanie's house. He pretended to buy a house, and Melanie showed him around. After a bit of casual chat, they discovered they shared the same values and hobbies. That night, while Wilson was excitedly telling the old lady about how considerate Melanie was, a banging sound came from his room. Listening closely, it seemed to be coming from his bedroom. Gathering his courage, Wilson went to the bedroom, only to see the doll banging against the wall. Wilson was scared out of his wits, but when he looked again, there was no doll. Wilson felt a splitting headache, and his hands were somehow covered in blood. The next evening, Wilson had another date with Melanie. Because his hands were covered in scars, Wilson had to wear gloves. Their relationship progressed quickly, and within 2 days of meeting, they were officially a couple. To win over Melanie's son Ty, Wilson requested a Puka doll from his boss. Because the dolls were so popular, Ty hadn't been able to get one. This brought Ty and Wilson closer. Melanie was grateful for everything Wilson had done, especially since her ex-husband was a deadbeat who never bought gifts for their child. Wilson wanted to inquire more about Melanie's ex-husband, but the next moment, the room's furnishings had changed. There was no Melanie or Ty, and it was clearly his own apartment. In the following days, Wilson became more abnormal. It seemed as if he had merged with Puka. After work one day, he broke the rules and brought the costume home. The huge costume in the narrow hallway looked out of place. Puka's eyes turned red, signifying violence and anger. He broke down the old lady's door and started to beat her, shattering the glass all around. But in the blink of an eye, he was back in his room, listening to the commotion next door, as if it was not him who was beating the old lady. Somehow managing to wait until dawn, Wilson was the first to push open the old lady's door. Surprisingly, the old lady was perfectly fine, with no trace of having been beaten. Wilson was restless. He realized that there might be something wrong with his brain, experiencing memory lapses. 1 second he saw Puka go crazy, and the next, the scene was completely flipped. He couldn't even remember why he had moved into this apartment. Listening to Wilson's recount, the old lady gave a cryptic response, saying everyone makes mistakes. As long as he can correct them from now on and make the right decisions, that's all that matters. The sales of Puka were booming, and Wilson's salary was on the rise. In his spare time, he would play with Melanie's son. Ty told him that he didn't need to go out of his way to please him and his mother. Their lasting companionship was more important than anything else. As Christmas approached, Wilson visited the manor and bought a Christmas tree for Melanie and her son. As Melanie admired the Christmas tree adorned with colorful lights, she couldn't help but exclaim, "Look at these dazzling lights." This statement stirred a vague memory in Wilson, and he started hearing the sounds of a radio, as though he was at a disaster scene. To show his fatherly image, Wilson threw a Christmas party for Ty. He also put on the Puka suit, giving Ty a big surprise. The children enjoyed themselves thoroughly, but one boy seemed disdainful. He said that Puka was a toy for little children, and even teased Ty for not having a father. Ty was angry, but before he could react, Puka dragged the boy into a room and thrashed him. The boy cried out for help, and the party ended in chaos, leaving a trauma on Ty. They didn't know that Wilson was playing the Puka. Melanie asked him where he had found such a perverted friend who would even hit a child. Wilson was furious, not knowing why his good intentions had resulted in bad outcomes. Before Melanie could explain, he noticed the Christmas tree in the corner was gone. He questioned Melanie why she threw away the tree without a word. He then asked about Ty's father and why Melanie never mentioned her ex-husband in front of him. The hysterical Wilson terrified Melanie, and she ordered him to leave. Returning home, Wilson retrieved his Puka suit. He felt as if he couldn't live without it, feeling asphyxiated without the disguise. Soon, the Puka toys that were sold started malfunctioning. They no longer repeated children's words, but kept repeating, "Look at these dazzling lights." Parents felt cheated and demanded refunds. The Puka shop was forced to close, and Wilson lost his job. His boss took back the Puka suit. Without this disguise, he felt as if his life lost all meaning. Feeling helpless, he went to Melanie to beg for reconciliation. But when Melanie saw him, she just ran off. He then noticed the Christmas tree in the corner had fallen over, with a large amount of blood seeping out from underneath. The scene abruptly shifts, and Wilson finds himself surrounded by towering flames. Terrifying Puka toys are wreaking havoc around him. The old lady next door, who was once kind and friendly, now has a terrifying, bloody hole in her head. She mutters that she's so sorry and he is too late. Wilson is left gasping for air. The world around him is no longer as he remembers it. In desperation, he sneaks into his former company and steals the suit of Puka. Adorned in the suit, he sends Melanie a Puka toy containing a recorded apology. He then hides behind a tree, hoping to win Melanie's forgiveness. However, he accidentally bumps into a passerby. Without exchanging words, they end up in a brawl in the middle of the street. The passerby grabs his mask and scatters the stuffing from the suit. Melanie finally realizes that the Puka toy is Wilson, the man who wore the suit and beat up the boy previously. Wilson finds his boss and explains that his mask was stolen by a passerby. Seeing Wilson's deep immersion into the role, the boss tells him that it's just a suit, a gimmick for selling toys. The words seem to awaken Wilson. In the next moment, all the customers around him have disappeared. Returning to his apartment, he learns that the old neighbor lady has been murdered. The scene is marked with signs of a struggle. The police say that the only weapon found at the scene is her bottle of liquor. Wilson knows that the Puka toy is to blame. He rushes upstairs for a final showdown with the monster. The monster's eyes are glowing with fire. In front of Wilson, it shreds a photo of Melanie and Ty. The next second, the monster disappears. Wilson realizes that the monster is planning to harm Melanie and Ty. He wields an axe and attacks the monster, causing it to bleed. Finally, he vanquishes the monster, believing that the monster can't harm anyone now. As dawn breaks, he rushes to Melanie's house. Inside, he sees a wedding photo of him and Melanie. He's puzzled by the situation. Melanie is playing with Ty, but they seem to ignore him, not responding to his calls. At this moment, a man who looks identical to Wilson appears at the door. The man sits on the sofa and gets into a heated argument with Melanie. He then violently smashes the Christmas tree. Seeing Ty shivering in the corner, the man regains his sanity and proposes they go out and buy a new tree. It's then that Wilson remembers that Melanie is his wife and Ty is his biological son. Wilson, a violent man, often loses his temper with his wife and son. After smashing the Christmas tree that day, he drives his family to buy a new one. However, due to speeding, he collides head-on with an oncoming car. The driver of the other car is the old neighbor lady who has a large hole in her forehead. His wife and son perish in the fiery crash, and he falls into a coma due to severe injuries. The police quickly arrive at the scene. It's then that he sees the cop performing first aid on him is none other than his former boss from the Puka store. The boss repeats one sentence while holding a flashlight. "Look at these dazzling lights." The whole story is an illusion produced by Wilson after a car crash. He realizes that all tragedies are caused by his violence. Thus, he weaves an illusion for himself, imagining all the people he saw before he died as characters in the illusion. Because he is subconsciously avoiding his mistakes, he attributes his violence to the puppet suit. When he puts on the suit, he becomes violent, but without the suit, he is a good man and a good father. In the end, the old lady with whom he had a car accident is not innocent. The first time Wilson saw her, she was drinking and chatting. By the end of the story, he learns that the old lady has died. The scene is full of signs of struggle, but the police say the only thing that fought with the old lady was her bottle of alcohol, implying that the old lady was a chronic alcoholic. Wilson's violent speeding, combined with the old lady's drunk driving, ultimately causes the tragedy. The second story, titled New Year, New You, begins with a girl named Alexis staring at her friend Danielle on the screen, who is now an internet celebrity, a sense of loss welling up in her. It turns out Alexis's dream is to be an actress. She won many drama awards in high school. However, due to an accident that disfigured her, she now has to work several low-paid jobs to make ends meet. There's a group photo hanging on the wall. It turns out that Alexis, Danielle, Kayla, and Chloe were once good friends. Now, Danielle has become an internet celebrity, while the other three are ordinary people, hustling every day just for food. Alexis follows Danielle's social media site. Whenever she posts a photo, countless fans will like and comment, full of praise. Even though Alexis is upset, she still carefully gives herself a good makeup, ready for a reunion party for the four of them since graduation many years ago. Kayla and Chloe arrive early. Alexis sends Danielle a reminder text. Kayla and Chloe are excitedly talking about Danielle, which makes Alexis very jealous. The accident in high school not only disfigured her, but also forced her to drop out of school early. Chloe doesn't notice Alexis's gloomy mood and keeps talking about how famous Danielle is now, with an annual income of millions of dollars. It's clear that Chloe envies Danielle's life. In the middle of their conversation, the doorbell suddenly rings. The group had thought that the high and mighty Danielle had forgotten about them, but to their surprise, she had come to attend the party. The Danielle that stands before them is glamorous, standing out amongst them like a crane among chickens. Danielle exchanges pleasantries with the other three, even bringing them some expensive gifts. After the greetings, they all start to chat casually. Danielle begins to show off, expressing envy for her friends who live stress-free lives compared to her busy schedule and her problem of earning too much money that she has no time to spend. Danielle suggests that since the new year is drawing close, they should each share the biggest achievement of their year. Kayla mentions she adopted a disabled child. Chloe talks about her terrible year, having gone bankrupt and gone on over 200 blind dates, yet remaining single. Alexis doesn't have much to share. She has spent the year in low spirits, not much happier than Chloe. Danielle keeps egging the three of them on until Kayla admits that she likes girls. Like discovering a new world, Danielle quickly takes out her phone to record a video of Kayla sharing her New Year's plans, but in reality she just wants to appear not discriminatory. Danielle turns the camera towards Alexis, hoping she would share a bit of her personal life. Alexis doesn't want to, but Danielle insists, stating that her million followers would love to see Alexis's beautiful face. This comment infuriates Alexis, who has a large scar on her face, and she retorts, asking Danielle if she's blind. Danielle feigns innocence and insists she just wanted to record a video, asking why Alexis is angry. She apologizes to Alexis, reminding her of their close friendship from the past, hoping that this small misunderstanding wouldn't affect their long-standing friendship. She then starts to manipulate Alexis, praising her strength. Danielle has no other skills, but her ability to manipulate is second to none. With just a few words, she pacifies Alexis and they make up. Danielle collects everyone's phones and the four friends begin to dance to the music. However, Alexis notices that Danielle keeps rolling her eyes at her. Next, the four friends start playing a game. Kayla says she's never dated two people at once. Chloe admits she has never played poker with a celebrity, then gives Danielle a look, implying that he wants to draw her into the conversation. Surprisingly, Danielle has indeed played poker with a celebrity, but due to a non-disclosure agreement, she can't reveal the person's name. She hints that it's the CEO of a company. Chloe and Kayla are stunned by that. Alexis again becomes jealous. She interjects, asking why the celebrity never contacted her again after the poker game, and what kind of poker game requires a non-disclosure agreement. Isn't this just being an escort? Next, Alexis says that she has never bullied an innocent girl to the point of her taking her own life. This implied that Danielle had done such a thing. Danielle puts on a stern face and starts to leave. Alexis stops Danielle, sits on her, and starts pouring alcohol down her throat. It turns out that Danielle had manipulated all three of them years ago, and together they bullied a girl named Kelsey, which led to her jumping off a building. Because of this incident, Alexis was also injured and left with a scar on her face. In fact, the gathering was a trap set for Danielle. All three women had suffered from Danielle's bullying. They tie her up. Danielle had once mocked Chloe to the point that no one loved her, which led to her developing bulimia for 2 years. She insulted Kayla, calling her a dead lesbian, almost driving Kayla into depression. But Danielle had somehow transformed into a popular internet figure spreading positivity. Alexis forces Danielle to confess the truth in front of the camera. She wants to expose Danielle's true face to the public. However, Danielle weeps, describing herself as a kind girl who feels guilty every day because she couldn't stop Kelsey from her death. She even manages to squeeze out a few tears. Alexis is furious because she absolutely needs Danielle to be ruined. In her madness, Alexis grabs some makeup and applies it to Danielle's face, making her look like a clown, and even cuts off her hair. Seeing things escalating, Chloe and Kayla quickly stop Alexis, but Alexis turns to find other props. Kayla goes to the bathroom alone to cool down. Taking advantage of the absence of the other two, Danielle strikes again, manipulating Chloe to untie her, promising to make her become an internet celebrity. Chloe is tempted and unties Danielle. On the other side, Kayla finds Alexis and asks her to stop because her actions betray their original intentions. After all, it wasn't just Danielle who bullied Kelsey into her death. All four of them were involved. Alexis returns to the main room intending to use a broken mirror to scar Danielle's face. Danielle calmly says that the scar on Alexis's face wasn't left by her, it was left by Kelsey. Then she stands up and starts fighting with Alexis, who is knocked unconscious. When she woke up, she found that both herself and Kayla had been locked in the sauna. Danielle and Chloe were in cahoots, intending to suffocate Kayla and Alexis to silence them. Kayla was filled with regret. In the first place, she never should have agreed to Alexis's proposal to hold this party. Why did they have to drag others down under the guise of justice? Danielle was a villain, and Alexis was not innocent either. It was her own choice to follow Danielle and bully Kelsey, to the point that Kelsey retaliated and scarred her face. She wasn't angry because her own life was going poorly. She was just jealous that Danielle was doing well. Chloe was eager to betray her friends for personal gain. She didn't want to kill anyone initially, but Danielle said that if they let Alexis go, it would ruin both their careers. Chloe thought this made sense and abandoned the idea of saving them. Unexpectedly, Kayla found a wine bottle in the sauna. They used the bottle to shatter the sauna's window. Hearing the noise, Danielle handed Chloe a knife, reminding her that Alexis and Kayla were obstacles on her path to fame. Alexis and Kayla couldn't believe that they were desperate enough to kill. Chloe and Kayla ran into each other. Kayla tried to persuade Chloe to give up her silly ideas, but Chloe got anxious. She didn't want to return to the days when she was rejected over 200 times. She accused Kayla of not wanting her to succeed, and in anger, pushed Kayla into a table, killing her. Meanwhile, Danielle was still searching in the darkness for Alexis. She called out, promising that they wouldn't hurt her, but it was not convincing as she held a knife in her hand. Chloe, crying, found Danielle and admitted that she had accidentally killed Kayla. Danielle praised her and said she was proud of her. Unexpectedly, Kayla's partner, unable to reach her, had tracked her to this place. Under Danielle's influence, Chloe decided to go all the way. They first chatted with him to calm him down, then stabbed him to death. Alexis watched the whole process from a corner. Danielle told Chloe that when the police arrived, they should say that Kayla's partner had gone on a killing spree and they had acted in self-defense. Alexis dashed upstairs and grabbed a golf club. She whacked the two who were chasing her. During the fight, Chloe was knocked down the stairs and died on the spot. Alexis and Danielle ended up wrestling their muscles. Alexis argued that she had worked just as hard and she deserved to be an internet celebrity. Driven by this sense of indignation, she pushed Danielle out of the window. Watching the blood spread in the pool below, Alexis triumphed in her counterattack. The scene shifts to Alexis managing to fool the police with the story Danielle concocted. She claimed that Kayla and her partner had argued, and in his madness, he had killed the other three sisters. In self-defense, she had to kill Kayla's partner, thus becoming the sole survivor. Using this fabricated story, she gained lots of followers and replaced Danielle as the new internet celebrity. The third story, titled Down, begins on a dark and stormy night over a city. It is the day before Valentine's Day, and people have already left work. However, in a particular deserted office building, an account supervisor named Jennifer is still working late at night. Her laptop screen is flashing brightly in the darkened room, and she types an email to an old flame, telling him that she'll be flying to New York that night, and she'd love to meet with him. On the other side of the building, a man emerges from a restroom stall and adjusts his clothes. He accidentally wets himself with water from the faucet. He hurriedly dries the wet spot with the hand dryer. Back in Jennifer's office, she decides not to send the email after all. Shaking her head, she closes her laptop and gets ready to leave. She grabs a printout of her flight ticket for tonight and exits the office. Then she gets into the elevator from the 49th floor. Meanwhile, the man leaves the restroom on the 42nd floor and gets into the same elevator as Jennifer. Initially, he tries to make a small talk with her, asking her where she's parked, how she feels about the long weekend, and even joking about the gift bag that she's carrying. For the most part, Jennifer seems disinterested and just politely replies. She comments on the bottle of wine he's holding, and he explains that a client gifted it to him after closing a deal. The man points at a crude drawing scrawled on the elevator wall. It's a stick figure inside a box, begging to be let out. The two joke that somebody deranged drew it. Suddenly, the elevator comes to a stop. Suddenly, the elevator comes to a screeching halt. They try hitting the call and alarm buttons on the panel, but it appears not to be working. They get confused since the lights and the small TV screen on the elevator are working fine, but the buttons are not. The man tries to pry the doors open, but he couldn't. They then try waving at the CCTV camera, and Jennifer wonders why there isn't anyone responding from the security office. Their phones also don't receive any signal because they're a few floors underground already. The two spend the time getting to know each other. Jennifer reveals that she's working for a public relations company, occupying the top floors of the building, while the man is a newcomer at an accounting firm housed in the same building. They then try to scream through the doors, but they seem to be the only ones left in the building. The two decide to go out through the elevator vent. The man bends and hoists Jennifer, but can't find any hatch on the ceiling. Her hand snags on something and she gets hurt, so they stop their attempts. An hour passes, and Jennifer is officially not making it to her flight anymore. By this point, the two are just dejected, and they slump on the floor. She mentions that she's thirsty, and the man offers his half-empty water bottle. In return, she shares some chocolate with him. The two then ponder if they'd be stuck in the elevator until Tuesday, since it's Friday night now, and Monday is a holiday, meaning that they all have to miss Daniel C.C. horror movies for 3 days. 4 hours in, and Jennifer needs to pee badly. The man tries to assure her that it's not that smelly if she has to pee on the elevator, but she's too shy to do so. He even offers her his coat to pee on. But in the end, she decides to use her empty thermos while the man turns his back. Using a wine opener she found in her bag, Jennifer adds another stick figure to the elevator wall, drawing to mimic their current situation. The man shares that he's a workaholic, so no one would be looking for him even if he's gone too long. He asks if anyone would be worried about her since she's supposed to be on a flight right now, but she answers that it was supposed to be a surprise, so no one is waiting for her. To cheer her up, he opens the wine bottle. The two sit next to each other and take turns drinking. Jennifer and the man are now playing a game where they sketch the other person, and he suddenly confesses that he's seen her around in the lobby before. He remembers her because she always seemed so nice. Jennifer assures him that she doesn't think he's a stalker, and the two reveal their sketches of the other. She's drawn him as a devil drinking wine as a joke, while he drew her very beautifully. She chalks her artistic interpretation of him up to her being hungry, and they begin fantasizing about the food they want to eat. The conversation quickly veers into X-rated territory when Jennifer asks the man a question about his past conquests. He blushes and refuses to answer, so she tells a tale of a past escapade with a former boyfriend. He is wowed by her adventure and says that none of his experiences can ever come close to her story. Not willing to give up, Jennifer urges him to make up a fantasy instead. They are recording everything on her phone, and he starts to tell her a fantasy about him and a hot coworker in his car. Jennifer steps closer to him, and he abruptly ends the story. He shyly admits that his hormones are turned on by their game, and Jennifer tells him that she appreciates his honesty. He takes things a step further by confessing that he'd like to tongue massage her right now. He walks to her side of the elevator and kisses her. After their tryst, the man makes the wrong move by saying that he is halfway to falling in love with her already. Jennifer is thrown by this shocking development and sets the record straight with him. What they had was nice, but she is still in love with her ex-fiancé, and she wants to fix things with him. This is not at all what the man wants to hear, because he thinks that what he and Jennifer have is a real connection. He promises to take her out when they're free of the elevator, and she'll see that they belong together. But Jennifer shoots him down and tells him that when they're out of the elevator, they'll go back to their lives and move on. The man is now visibly upset and admits that he's been watching her all this time. He shows her a few of the security camera images that he got of her throughout the building. In fact, he's been doing so much more than watching her. He's fantasizing about having her, and he planned everything so he can finally get to talk to her and make her see that he's the one. It turns out that the man isn't an accountant, but a security guard assigned to the front desk of the building. He has the key to the elevator, and he used it to stop it and make Jennifer believe that they're trapped. No security guard has come to their rescue because he's supposed to be the security guard on duty tonight. In his despair at her rejection, he inserts the key and gets the elevator running again, telling her that she's free to leave. While he's telling his chilling tale, Jennifer cowers into the farthest corner of the elevator. It sinks into her that he is an obsessed stalker, and she becomes afraid. However, when he inserts the key again, she goes ballistic and threatens that she will call the cops and throw him in jail. They get into an altercation that ends with the key being broken and then trapped for real this time. The man appears to be unconscious from the physical blows Jennifer gave him, and she checks if he is dead. But he opens his eyes and suddenly slams her head against the floor, rendering her unconscious. She groggily wakes up and moves to the corner opposite the man. She asks him why he trapped them inside the elevator instead of just asking her out. He answers that he needs to get her away from other distractions, so she would realize that he's better than everyone else. He even points out the irony of their situation. He wanted a relationship with her, and they technically met, got to know each other, and broke up all inside a tiny room. Jennifer insists that other security guards must also be in the building, but he replies that he took care of the guards' shifts for them and no one else is coming. She yells at him for kidnapping her, and he responds by choking and slamming her against the wall. He tells her that he liked her, and all he did was encourage their attraction to each other. The man then proceeds to taunt her by opening the gift she got for her ex-fiancé. He wears the shirt and smokes the cigar from the cigar set she bought. While this is happening, Jennifer is just crying. After his rage passes, the man apologizes and tells her that he just gets like that sometimes when he's mad. He smashes the panel of light on the side of the elevator, then gets the idea to break one of the ceiling tiles so they can go out. Now it's only a matter of who will give whom a boost. The man suggests that she give him a boost so he can get the elevator running again. Jennifer refuses and insists that he give her a boost instead, and then she'll get help for the both of them. He is worried that she'll leave him stranded there, but she asks him to trust her. She even promises that she won't call the cops and they'd go on vacation after they're free. This convinces him to let her climb first. Jennifer climbs through the opening and he instructs her to keep climbing to the elevator shaft. She smiles, then leaves him in the elevator alone. She continues climbing and attempts to reach the nearest elevator doors. She is about to pry them open, but the man follows her and grabs her foot. He jumps and they both fall down back into the elevator. Jennifer wakes up first, and she hurriedly grabs a few sheets of paper from her bag and lights them with a cigar lighter from the gift set. The man wakes up too, but she kicks him in the face and ties him up. The fire she started successfully triggers a fire alarm. She hopes that the fire department will come to their aid soon. In the meantime, she grabs a cigar cutter from the same set and threatens to torture the man. He begs her not to hurt him, and she offers him a deal. He confesses everything on camera, and she won't maim him. He agrees, and she starts filming his confession. He tells her his real name and that he made the drawing on the elevator wall earlier that day. He tracked her movement through the security cameras, so he could get inside the elevator with her at the right moment. He then distracted her with the drawing while he used the key to stop the elevator. He admits to kidnapping Jennifer and hurting her. The man also additionally confesses that he used to be a hotshot executive in a big firm, and that fantasy about the hot coworker was true. They were fooling around and he got distracted, driving off the road and crashing into a tree. This immediately killed the woman he was with. He only got 6 months in jail, but when he got out, he couldn't get a job anymore. His money ran out and he was forced to take a lowly security job in the building, where he eventually first saw Jennifer. He knew that if he approached her as a security guard, she wouldn't have given him the time of day. And more than anything, he wanted to be the same hotshot executive when he finally met her. So that's why he made that plan to kidnap her. Jennifer stops filming, moved by his story. Unbeknownst to the two, another security guard has entered the building with his girlfriend to take her to the high-rise building's roof. He notices that the man is not at the front desk like he was supposed to, and then he sees on the security camera feed that there are people stuck in the elevator. He contacts Jennifer through the elevator's call button and hurriedly goes down to manually open the elevator. The security guard arrives and tries to help them out, but the man knocks Jennifer unconscious, then kills the security guard. He carries her outside, then stashes her in the trunk of his car. After he disposes of the body and cleans up the mess, he puts on his uniform and deletes all security camera footage. The security guard's girlfriend asks him if he's seen him, and he kills her as well. He then disposes of her body and drives away with Jennifer still unconscious in his trunk. The man drives to a secluded place, then douses a large dumpster with gasoline. He says goodbye to her and opens the trunk, so he can throw her body into the dumpster and set it on fire. While his back is turned, Jennifer hits his head with the gasoline can. She runs inside the car and drives away as he howls in pain. She reverses the car and runs him over. She gets out and sees him barely clinging to life inside the dumpster. Then Jennifer lit a cigar, smoking it, then using it to set the dumpster and the man on fire. The fourth story, titled Treehouse, begins with a man waking up from unconsciousness to find himself locked to his own bed. A group of women surrounded the bed, aiming a loaded crossbow at his private parts, planning to perform a minor surgery on him, possibly because it's too smelly. The man was scared out of his wits. He didn't know any of these women and had no idea what was going on. The story goes back a few days. The man named Peter was a celebrity chef known for his delicious dishes. He sometimes worked on TV selling kitchenware through live broadcasts. His business was booming. Due to his busy work and poor character, his wife divorced him and remarried, taking their daughter with her. But Peter didn't mind, as he was a human teddy bear. Without the constraints of marriage, he played even more recklessly. After finishing work, Peter drove back to his hometown, intending to take a vacation. As soon as he parked his car, he encountered a young lady asking for a lighter. Peter never refused anyone. He flirted with any female. Little did he know that there were more women following this young lady. This excited Peter. Another man, Lonnie, was Peter's high school classmate. Lonnie said his father died of cancer a few years ago, leaving him a shop. But he wasn't sad, as his father was a jerk. Peter also mentioned his father, who was much like Lonnie's father, pretty much a jerk. Peter's house was large. As soon as he arrived home, his twin sister, Gwen, was already waiting at the door, having missed him for so long. The house decoration was the same as before. Even the butler, who had taken care of them since childhood, hadn't changed. It's said that Peter didn't get along well with his father, so he only returned home after his father's death. The siblings had a good relationship and chatted together. At this time, Peter noticed a black goat outside the window, which had appeared out of nowhere. The black goat is the incarnation of Satan. Peter had a bad feeling, but in the blink of an eye, the goat disappeared without traces of its bad smell. Gwen was now a prosecutor. She said she needed to go out to handle work. After saying goodbye, only Peter and the old butler were left in the large house. Peter noticed that the landscape painting on the original staircase had been replaced with a picture of a picnicking woman. The woman's black pupils gave off an indescribable strangeness. The butler said this was a work of his father before his death. The old butler seemed to no longer take care of the house. The kitchen was crawling with insects and animals. At this time, Lonnie from the shop suddenly called. He hemmed and hawed on the phone, just wanting to confirm if Peter was still alive. This made Peter wonder what could possibly happen to him in his own house. But Lonnie abruptly hung up the phone. The weirdness didn't stop there. After his father's death, his study room was converted into a bedroom. Peter, in a daze, wanted to use the bathroom only to find the toilet bowl filled with bloodstains. At this point, the doorbell downstairs suddenly rang. Peter went downstairs to open the door and was greeted by one of the sexy women he met during the day. The woman was named Kara. She said her car broke down while on a road trip with her sisters, and she wanted to borrow a flashlight or a candle. Peter rummaged around the house to find the items for her, all the while flirting with her. Even after Kara left, he watched her go for a long time, clearly obsessed. The next morning, when Peter woke up from his pig-like sleep, he was greeted by the portrait of his late father by his bed. The lovely morning started with a jog. Peter happily jogged on the country roads until he reached the treehouse where he used to play as a child. Something terrible seemed to have happened in that treehouse, making him hesitant to enter. Suddenly, a girl behind him waved at him. He turned around and saw Kara from last night. She said she and her sisters had been struggling to fix the car all night and had no place to go. Peter was thrilled to see so many girls, so he quickly invited them to his house. The girls had long heard of Peter's reputation and were excited when the famous chef invited them for a meal. They happily accepted the invitation with all their luggage. Peter planned to throw away the eerie picnic painting, but Kara expressed her love for it. As they ate and chatted, Peter noticed that all the women had identical tattoos on their wrists. Kara said the tattoos were made to symbolize the sisterhood between them. The group played and made noise until late into the night. Peter told the butler that he liked all the girls outside, regardless of their age or skin color. The butler scoffed at Peter's womanizing, but she did envy the girls' youthful energy. After all, times were different. In her day, women had no rights and were bullied. They had no opportunity to express any pain and had to suffer in silence. Strangely, Peter hadn't drunk much, but his body started to fail him. He stumbled back to his room and fell asleep, snoring like a pig. Looking at the disheveled Peter, the portrait of his father on the side seemed to reveal a strange smile. Late at night, Peter woke up to find a girl beside him. This was a common scene for him, as one of the girls must have had too much to drink and lost control. From the end of the corridor came a beautiful song, sung by two girls who seemed to be having a great time. The song resonated with Peter, and he'd always welcome more girls. Guided by the melody, he walked into the room and found that the music was actually coming from a phonograph. Unexpectedly, there was also a peacock and a strange straw figure with red glows and sheep horns. Peter found it quite bizarre, wondering if the girls were worshiping Satan and playing with these odd things. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and a figure wearing a sheep's head and a cloak nonchalantly walked in. Peter was scared, but when he turned around, he found his bedroom door mysteriously locked. The sheep-headed figure was getting closer and closer. Peter's legs gave out, and he fell. When he awoke, he found himself in the situation he'd woken up to at the beginning, chained up, unable to move, with the girls in robes gathered around his bed, seemingly ready to devour him. Peter was a bit excited, thinking the girls were going to play some fun game with him. Kara, with a sinister look, asked Peter if he recognized her. Peter retorted that he was a playboy in bed and wouldn't recognize her when she was dressed up. It turned out that Kara had a sister. Over a decade ago, Peter had gotten drunk and had taken advantage of her sister in the treehouse. Because Peter had always maintained a positive image, nobody believed he could do such a thing. They blamed Kara's sister, who couldn't handle the accusations and died young. The picnic painting in the house depicted Kara's sister. Apparently, the girls had gone to great lengths to get close to Peter to avenge Kara's sister. They brought out a crossbow and aimed it at Peter's private but smelly parts. Peter cursed them out, but Kara replied with a smile, saying that there were not angry women but angry witches. They had put a paralysis spell on him, and he could only watch as they tortured him with razors and snakes, even causing him to wet his pants in fear. It turned out Peter had done similar things many times before. Each time he would pay hush money to the girls he had hurt and threaten them into silence. Everyone had thought Peter was a playboy, but he turned out to be a scumbag. As the witches continued their torment, Peter suddenly found himself able to move again. Seeing his chance, he attacked the unprepared girls, sending them scattering in fear. He tried to call Lonnie for help, but Kara cut off the call. Then he was struck by the paralysis spell again and passed out. Upon receiving the call, Lonnie rushed over. Kara stepped in his way, lying that they wanted to play hide-and-seek with him. But Lonnie was no fool. Who would play in the dark? With that, he pulled out a gun. Just then, Peter's butler came out to stop Lonnie. It turns out the butler was Lonnie's biological mother. Peter's playboy behavior was inherited from his father, who had forced himself on the young butler years ago and fathered Lonnie. The butler had endured the indignity all these years. Now, she finally saw a chance for revenge. It's no wonder Lonnie and Peter both said their father was a bastard. They were both sons of the same man. The witches dressed Peter in a short skirt and high heels, mimicking his past behavior to tease him. They were giving him a taste of his own medicine. Peter was terrified. He ran out of the room in his little high heels and found himself in the treehouse from his childhood. The walls were plastered with news reports of the incident that led to Kara's sister's death. The incident almost resulted in criminal charges against Peter, but he hired a powerful team of lawyers and managed to minimize the consequences. A car was passing by. Peter banged on the window, crying for help. To his surprise, the driver was his sister Gwen. She was puzzled by his dress. Peter explained everything to Gwen. She burst into laughter. It turned out that she had hired the witches to punish Peter, who had caused the death of her best friend. Peter defended himself, saying he and Kara's sister were drunk that night, and he hadn't expected to do something like that. Gwen berated him. Over the years, Peter had violated a female reporter who interviewed him, his female employees, and even the female lawyer who defended him. He seemed to take advantage of any woman he saw. Surely he couldn't have been drunk every time, but he managed to maintain a positive public image and no one believed the victims. He even accused these women of throwing their own dirty bodies at him. While Gwen's actions might seem like a betrayal, she just wanted to teach her brother a lesson. She hadn't expected the witches to actually try to kill him. The witches stopped the siblings' car and tied Peter to the altar once again. This time, Peter seemed doomed. He was tormented to his limits. Nails pierced his palms, and a snake crawled from his mouth into his stomach. Suddenly, the scene shifts. Peter is lying unharmed in his bedroom as if everything that had just happened was merely a dream. The large house is eerily empty. The phone suddenly rings. Kara coldly tells Peter over the phone that the witches have given him a chance to live this time. If he dares to offend again, next time he will die a very gruesome death. As she speaks, the stove suddenly bursts into flames, scaring Peter into wetting his pants again. In reality, these girls are not witches at all. They had laced Peter's food with hallucinogenic mandrake. The sudden stove fire and the nail through the palm were all props prepared by the girls. Kara, despite hating Peter for causing her sister's death, had given him a chance to start over for the sake of Gwen and the old butler. Peter seemed to have had an epiphany. He immediately went to apologize to his ex-wife and daughter. However, his ex-wife had already started a new family. Peter knelt before his daughter, promising he had changed his ways and learned to be an upright man and a good father. His behavior was so out of the ordinary that his ex-wife and daughter wondered if he had been diagnosed with an incurable disease. On his way home, a woman initiated a conversation with Peter. Peter was puzzled because he didn't know her. The woman lifted her sleeve to reveal a tattoo. It seems the witches really do exist and they will watch him in the future. The fifth story, titled I'm Just Done With You, begins with a keyboard warrior named Larry registering an account, spouting obscenities online whenever he has nothing better to do. He isn't afraid of reprisals, as he's anonymous on the internet. His ex-girlfriend is getting married tomorrow and the groom is Larry's cousin. He immediately left a comment under their wedding photo saying she navigates life without paddles. She just rides the waves, implying she's attracted to any man who comes her way. Since he has to attend the wedding tomorrow, he arranged to meet his sister Rachel at a motel first. The motel owner, Chester, was chatting with a drunk guest. Chester is a bit of a prankster. He first asked Larry to pay in cash, then asked him to pay with a card after receiving the money, tricking Larry into paying twice. Seeing Larry getting angry, Chester laughed his curly hair off as a joke. Despite Larry's online bravado, he is a pushover in real life. Finally getting the keys and entering the room, Larry opened his laptop and left a negative review for the motel. He then logged onto his ex-girlfriend's social media page, starting to undress himself in front of her photos, completely unaware of the camera in the room's ventilation duct. The news on TV reported a recent chain of car accidents resulting in a young woman's death. Larry checked his watch. Rachel was late for their meeting. He tried calling her, but there was no answer. Worried, he called Chester, hoping his sister had contacted the motel in advance. Chester, with a heavy voice, told Larry that his sister might not be coming. She was the type that navigates life without paddles and just rides the waves, and she may have drowned. It was another of Chester's jokes. He hadn't received any message from Larry's sister. Larry was furious. Insulting him was one thing, but his sister was off limits. However, being a pushover, he didn't dare to vent his anger over the phone. Seething with anger, he encountered the drunk guest from before who ranted at him, almost scaring Larry into wetting his pants. Larry didn't dare to retaliate. Terrified, all he could do was send frantic messages to Rachel, planning to find another place to stay as soon as she arrived. Feeling wronged, he needed an outlet to vent. So he took out his phone and, using his anonymous account, he let loose a torrent of expletives under his ex-girlfriend's photos. After venting thoroughly, he showered, only to be pranked again by Chester. This time his anger escalated and he lashed out at Chester. However, Chester was no pushover either. He confronted Larry, asking him what his problem was and if he couldn't take a joke. Seeing Chester getting angry, Larry quickly backed down, offering compliments until Chester cooled off. As soon as Chester left, Larry started packing his things. He couldn't stand being in this place for another minute. Unexpectedly, Chester apologized to him, shook hands, and promised to tell him as soon as his sister Rachel arrived. Larry was perplexed, because Chester said earlier that he had no news of his sister, but how could he know her name was Rachel? Larry became alarmed and quickly called the police. When the police arrived, Chester calmly told them that Larry had shared his sister's name. It turned out that the motel wasn't even Chester's. The owners were an elderly couple and Chester was just minding the store. While the police were questioning Chester, Larry went to the front desk to look for clues. He found his sister Rachel's check-in record. She had checked in earlier, but Chester had claimed she had never arrived. Taking advantage of the police checking the records, Chester suddenly punched himself and accused Larry of hitting him. Larry was flabbergasted. The police were furious at Larry. Just as things were getting heated, Rachel arrived. Chester quickly changed his attitude, pleading with the police on Larry's behalf. Seeing Chester wasn't pressing charges, the police decided to let Larry go. It turned out Rachel had booked the room online, hence the check-in record. Chester quickly apologized, admitting he shouldn't have been pranking Larry all night. He even offered drinks to the siblings. After this series of events, Larry and Rachel felt that Chester wasn't a bad person after all, just a bit too fond of pranks. 3 people were lounging by the pool, sipping drinks and chatting. Chester, showing a friendly demeanor, listened attentively. After a few drinks, Larry started to spill his story about attending his ex-girlfriend's wedding. He even brought out the letter he had written to his ex. The content of the letter moved Chester to tears. He confessed he had never seen a man as deeply emotional. After some playful banter, everyone retired to their rooms to sleep. However, in the middle of the night, the man heard arguments erupting outside. It turned out that Chester had gone too far with his pranks, scratching a drunk guest's motorcycle. The guest was livid, threatening to remove Chester's joking head. To his surprise, Chester suddenly fought back with incredible strength, beating the large man until he was helpless. All the while he was cursing that he was just playing a joke on him. Then he took a knife and stabbed the large man to death. The brother and sister were terrified. Rachel suggested calling the police, but Chester stopped them, saying he would do it himself. The frightened duo hid in the kitchen, only to discover the bodies of the motel owners. It turned out Chester was a psychopathic killer. He had murdered the motel owner couple and was pretending to be a temporary employee. Suddenly, Chester appeared behind them with an innocent look on his face, saying he didn't kill this couple. The motel owner was a pervert. He had installed cameras in the rooms to spy on guests. He then told his wife about it, and she went mad and stabbed her husband. They ended up stabbing each other to death. Rachel pretended to believe Chester. Seizing an unguarded moment, she smashed a wine bottle over his head. The two of them hurried back to their room to search for car keys, only to discover Chester holding 2 keys, standing at the door, glaring at them ominously. Just as he was about to attack, the police arrived. Seeing salvation, the brother and sister rushed to seek protection, only to find that the police officer pulled out his gun and ordered them to lie down. No wonder Chester insisted on making the call himself. He had told the police that the siblings were the serial killers. Without verifying, the officer accepted the story and saw Chester as a good citizen. Seizing a moment when the officer was off guard, Chester strangled him with a tie, killing him on the spot. Just when it seemed that the siblings' fate was sealed, Chester surprisingly untied them and tossed them the keys, saying he was letting them go. Confused and scared, the siblings didn't dare to question. They grabbed the keys, started the car, and made their escape. Chester waved cheerfully from behind as they drove away. However, they hadn't gotten far when the car broke down. It turned out Chester had blocked the car's exhaust pipe. With no other choice, the siblings stumbled out of the car and tried to escape on foot, but Chester was right behind them, keeping a leisurely pace. In this life-and-death situation, Larry shouted at his sister to run ahead. But their sibling bond was deep. Rachel couldn't bear to leave her brother behind. Shortly after, Chester overpowered them and forced them to inhale an anesthetic gas. After some time, Larry woke up from unconsciousness, finding himself floating in the middle of a pool. The deranged Chester had arranged the bodies of the 4 dead people as if they were still alive, throwing a pool party. Larry, still under the influence of the anesthetic, couldn't move. Chester revealed to Larry that he was an arbiter in life, punishing those who had committed crimes but had not been held accountable. He killed the motel owner couple because they had installed cameras in their rooms to spy on guests. He killed the drunk guest because he bullied people all the time. He killed the policeman for his dereliction of duty and frequent false accusations. And he tortured Larry now because he was a keyboard warrior, hiding behind an alias to spew filth online. Chester propped Larry up in front of a camera, forcing him to confess the truth. Larry had to confess every wrongdoing he had committed online. As Larry got more into his confession, his thoughts darkened and merged with his online persona. After finishing his confession, he was still worried about his sister's safety. Chester told him to go find Rachel in the bathroom. To his horror, Rachel had been cruelly murdered. Chester explained that when Larry used vile words to insult people online, Rachel would always praise him for doing well, so she wasn't innocent either. Only by killing Rachel could Chester teach Larry a real lesson. After that, Chester posted Larry's confession video and the love letter he had written to his ex-girlfriend online. The response was immediate, with likes flooding in. Even his ex-girlfriend commented, calling Larry a madman and stating she had never liked him. This reveals that the ex-girlfriend was just a figment of his imagination. Larry started with a wailing cry, but then surprisingly he started laughing. It seemed Chester had driven him to madness. Chester declared he was tired of the game and was about to kill Larry. However, Larry said he wanted to die, but didn't want it to be so meaningless. He suggested they should take the bodies and crash his ex-girlfriend's wedding. Chester praised him for his brilliance, and the two lunatics took Rachel's body and prepared to head to the wedding venue. Chester started to feel something was off, as Larry, who had turned dark, seemed even more insane than him. They drove and laughed along the way. Larry revealed a secret to Chester. The car they were driving belonged to Rachel. She had a pet dog, and she had removed the passenger's side airbag out of fear it might harm the little dog in an accident. Now he was about to crash the car into a wall. Chester was taken aback, as he knew Larry wouldn't have the guts to go through with it. Indeed, he wouldn't dare, but he was not in his right mind at that moment. In the end, Chester died, and the surviving Larry became a wanted man by the police. He was charged with killing 6 innocent citizens, including the motel owner couple, the drunk guest, a negligent policeman, his own sister, and Chester in the passenger seat. Now, Larry had completely merged with his online alias. Every now and then, he would still log into his account and insult those keyboard warriors, making all the cowards hiding behind their keyboards quiver in fear. Some suggested that Chester never existed, and that the entire situation was a self-directed play, a result of Larry's split personality. However, the police's wanted notice stated that Larry had killed 6 people, with Chester being the last victim. This implies that Chester was real and not a figment of Larry's psyche. The 6th story, titled All That We Destroy, begins with a boy named Spencer, having severe violent tendencies. He could become physically aggressive at the slightest provocation. His distressed mother, out of love for her son, kept him confined at home. She even tracked his movements when he left the house, fearing he might cause trouble. Life was peaceful until one day Spencer went for a walk and saw a car approaching from afar. The driver recklessly dropped off a sexy woman and sped away without a second glance. Spencer, who hadn't seen any stranger in a long time, approached the woman. The girl named Ashley boldly approached Spencer, asking him for his jacket because of the cold wind. Seeing Spencer as harmless, she even proposed to go to his home on their first meeting. Spencer's mother, named Dr. Victoria, was a genetic scientist and often preoccupied with work. Thinking his mother wasn't home, Spencer brought Ashley back. Ashley made herself comfortable, entering Spencer's room without asking, and started flirting with him. Initially, the atmosphere was pleasant until Spencer was offended by something Ashley said. In the next moment, he strangled her. Ashley was confused. She had perceived Spencer as a harmless guy, but he suddenly snapped and killed her. After the murder, Spencer casually sat down to dinner as if nothing had happened. When Dr. Victoria returned home and found Ashley's body, she was shocked. She thought Spencer had reformed, but he could not resist his old habits at the first encounter with a stranger. Since Ashley had been abandoned here with no one knowing her identity, Dr. Victoria had an idea. She used her knowledge and quickly cloned a new Ashley in the lab. She bathed, dressed, and sent the clone to her son's room. Clones don't have deep memories, and Dr. Victoria hoped that through the clone, her son could learn to interact normally with others. However, Spencer was unstable. He would kill in a fit of rage. Ashley was repeatedly killed, her body destroyed, and then cloned again. In this way, Spencer killed 4 Ashleys in a row. Seeing that the clones were having no effect on her son's condition, Dr. Victoria turned to the lab and called Spencer's father for help. In this high-tech world, people don't use phones for communication. By wearing a certain device, she could initiate a heart-to-heart conversation with her husband, who was in another city. The father suggested that the clone lacked memories and personality, rendering it inhuman, which might be why Spencer couldn't interact with it. Dr. Victoria found this idea reasonable, so after cloning the 5th Ashley, she planned to first fabricate a set of memories for her, train her to be more like a human, and then introduce her to her son. In truth, Spencer was quite lonely. He yearned for freedom but usually spent his time alone at home, creating art that was incredibly dark and eerie. One day, while he was out for a stroll, he saw a young woman named Marissa, who had recently moved into the neighborhood. Marissa was a radiant and beautiful woman who initiated a conversation with Spencer. Like him, Marissa had a controlling mother and had escaped from her to live alone in this secluded place. Their shared experiences brought them closer, and they enjoyed each other's company. That night, Marissa visited Spencer's home to give him some homemade cookies, hoping to chat for a while, but Dr. Victoria sent her away. She expressed her concerns to her husband. She feared that Spencer might have another violent episode and kill Marissa, and she disliked Marissa as she found her too talkative and not the kind of daughter-in-law she had envisioned. Dr. Victoria was a control freak. While keeping Marissa at bay, she was also working on creating memories for the clone, Ashley, attempting to mold her into her idea of a perfect daughter-in-law. But Spencer wasn't fond of the clone. He visited Marissa in secret and showed her a painting he had made for her. Unlike his usual dark style, this painting was bright and beautiful. Marissa loved it and complimented Spencer on his talent. Receiving praise for the first time, Spencer was overjoyed. However, when Spencer came home, Dr. Victoria scolded him fiercely. In the past, Spencer would always obey his mother, but this time he argued back. He told her that he was trying to make the changes she wanted. He was trying to make friends and control his violent urges. But Dr. Victoria was worried about Spencer's unpredictable temper and feared that he might kill Marissa one day. So she introduced him to the new Ashley she had carefully created. With his mother's guidance, Spencer chatted a bit more with Ashley this time. She complimented his painting and asked to see more of his work. But Spencer's eerie style made her uncomfortable, and her reaction angered him. The fifth Ashley also met a tragic end. Spencer told his mother that every morning when he woke up, everything around him felt fake. But this time he felt better, and for the first time, he even initiated a hug with his mother. In reality, Spencer's change was due to Marissa, but Dr. Victoria mistakenly thought that her treatment was working. So she cloned a sixth Ashley and tried to make her more appealing to her son. She showed Ashley videos of her son when he was just 7 years old, playing with the family's pet dogs. She also showed her the tombstones of the 2 dogs, both of whom had died in accidents. The next morning, Marissa found Spencer and even invited him to go to the city to see an art exhibition. Marissa was cheerful and vibrant, exactly the kind Spencer liked. A long-lost smile appeared on his face. Unlike his first meeting with Ashley, this time Spencer took the initiative to put a coat on Marissa. He had never been to the city before, and no one had ever taken him to an art exhibition. Spencer opened up to Marissa, revealing that during a primary school activity, he had pushed a classmate off the mountain in a bid to win and experience the thrill of control. From then on, he was expelled from school. Dr. Victoria had no choice but to take him to a secluded place, not allowing him to go out or interact with others. Unexpectedly, Marissa was not afraid after hearing this. Instead, she strongly disagreed with his mother's approach. Marissa thought Spencer's paintings were excellent. She took the initiative to exhibit his paintings and encouraged Spencer to hold his own exhibition in the future. These actions made Spencer incredibly happy. However, as soon as he returned home from his sweet time with Marissa, Spencer was scolded by his mother. Dr. Victoria did not allow him to interact with Marissa, stating that only she could accompany Spencer for a lifetime. It's no wonder Spencer turned out this way. Spencer liked Marissa and wanted to be with her, but he was also afraid that he might have a sudden violent episode and kill Marissa. As a result, he could only follow his mother's arrangement to first try cohabiting with the clone. On the other hand, under the long-term cultivation of Dr. Victoria, the clone's self-consciousness was gradually awakening. In her mind, images of her own death would suddenly flash. Dr. Victoria deceived Ashley, telling her that she was saved by Spencer from a pond in the suburbs. But if so, why did Spencer always avoid her and not interact with her? She began to doubt the world around her, always feeling that everything was not real. One day, Marissa came to find Spencer again. When she arrived at the backyard, she saw Dr. Victoria and Ashley chatting together. But Spencer had never told her that there was a woman hidden in his house. Marissa thought Ashley looked familiar, so she quietly took a picture of her. When she went home and checked the internet, she realized Ashley was a notorious criminal. Marissa was worried about the safety of Spencer and his mother, and quickly texted Spencer about this. When Spencer did not reply for a long time, she came to Spencer's house. Marissa proposed to call the police, but it would expose his murder. Spencer was very angry. He said that he had wanted to change for her. With that, he strangled Marissa's neck. In the struggle, Marissa used her last strength to dial 911. Perhaps there was a moment when Spencer had the possibility to become normal, but now he was beyond redemption. Meanwhile, suspecting that Dr. Victoria had deceived her, Ashley took advantage of the situation when no one was around. She stealthily slipped into Spencer's room and opened his sketchbook, encountering the image of her own death. Ashley instantly remembered everything. However, she only remembered that Spencer had strangled her and had no idea that she was a clone. In a panic, Ashley found a hammer in the closet for self-defense and attempted to escape this terrifying place. At this moment, Dr. Victoria returned home. Ashley had no choice but to hide in her lab. On returning home, Dr. Victoria discovered Marissa's body and chastised Spencer again. At the same time, Ashley in the lab turned on Dr. Victoria's computer and saw her clone data, instantly understanding everything. It turned out that Spencer had killed her more than once. Dr. Victoria asked her son to quickly deal with Marissa's body. Then she went to the lab alone, where she ran into Ashley. An enraged Ashley knocked Dr. Victoria unconscious with the hammer. Hearing the noise, Spencer also rushed to the lab and started fighting with Ashley. Having been killed 5 times, Ashley was thoroughly familiar with Spencer's moves. In the end, she managed to kill Spencer during their 6th battle. Just as Spencer breathed his last, the police arrived. Ashley was a wanted criminal, so she was taken away by the police, charged with the murder of Spencer. The death of her son left Dr. Victoria devastated. She had always been unwilling to give up on her son, which was why her husband had left her. However, her husband's pleas couldn't make her let go of her obsession. She destroyed the chip used for communication, severing all contact with the outside world. From behind her, there were movements in the pool. A new Spencer was born. Dr. Victoria would take the new Spencer and move to a place cut off from the world to start anew. After all, this wasn't her first time doing so. Although it's not explicitly mentioned, from the last conversation between the father and the mother, it can be inferred that the previous Spencer is also a clone. Spencer is in his 20s, yet there are no photos of him as a child at home. The only video also stops when he was 7 years old, indicating that Spencer died in an accident when he was 7. Unable to let go of her son, Dr. Victoria repeatedly created clones, and the tombstones for the 2 dogs were actually the failed clones. Due to the imperfect cloning technology, there were always defective products. Eventually, she created a relatively successful Spencer, but due to genetic defects, Spencer was inherently violent. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.